Hello, everybody. Welcome to another Comic Source Comic Boom collaboration. This is your DC Spotlight for the week of May 14th, 2024. Uh, a little bit of a bigger week than we've had in a while. 10 books that we're going to talk about today. And I thought overall it was a pretty solid week. There were some things to be excited about for sure. What do you think, Rocky?
Yeah, I thought it was one of the better weeks. Some pleasant surprises, and yeah, it was a welcome bright spot. I know that I have to say, there's been a lot of DC's taken a lot of hits lately because of sales and what have you, and you know. I guess maybe it's because I feel compelled to say it, and I realize that maybe you and I are outliers because we read every DC comic that comes out every week, but there's some good comics here. I mean, DC's quality is not near as bad as some would suggest out there, and this is and we'll be talking about this as we go through the titles, and because there's still a lot of fun to be had at DC and a lot to look forward to with Absolute Power, and even some unknown, potentially much brighter days with the what's going to happen at DC in September. So I would just I just want to share my unsolicited opinion that people should keep the faith with DC, and it's there's some good comics, and hopefully we'll be able to shed some light on some of those are this week.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. So let's kick it off with Outsiders number 7, written by Jackson Lansing and Colin Kelly. Robert Carey handles the art. Valentina Tadeo on colors. Tom Napolitano on letters. I have to admit to feeling a little bit lost when reading this. You mentioned from the beginning how much, like from the first issue, how much this really seemed like it was kind of building on the foundation of authority, Wildstorm property from back in the day. And, sure enough, you were proven correct as the series has gone on. It's leaned more and more into that. I've never read, Planetary or the Authority, which, spun out after that. But this is kind of the origin of Jaquita Wagner, as it were, or at least the story of her. How did she go from being the Jaquita Wagner of Authority that, fans of that series knew, to being drummer, and being in this Outsider series. So I understand that transition, but I don't have the context of who she was in the Authority. Plus, the other thing is this. It was Warren Ellis that did the Authority, right? So we're talking like much like Grant Morrison, very meta, very much doing that thing that Grant Morrison did in Animal Man, way back in the day in the late '80s, early '90s, where again, being very meta and kind of referencing the fact that he was in a comic, meeting Morrison himself. It's that kind of thing. The Authority with all these different members that are talking about, reading books, reading realities, where they're kind of self-referencing the comics and the different stories and the multiverse of DC. So it's very esoteric and it's very sort of abstract. And like I said, I feel like without the context of having read The Authority, I just feel a little bit lost. Now, that being said, I'm still enjoying it. It's still interesting to me. Um, but I can't help but wonder, had I read The Authority, if I would be getting more out of it, So you have read The Authority. What are
Yeah.
your thoughts on it?
Well, first, I'm hoping to get to have you expand on your opinion a little bit more, because to be quite frank, the planetary the story of the planetary it's about basically these four individuals at our beginning of this issue, and Jaquita Wagner was one of them, and there was a separate character called Drummer, and there was this Elijah Snow. He was the leader of the four, and they basically ended up saving their world, which I guess we'll just call it the planetary world. And they really were archaeologists of the unknown. And ultimately, it was 24 issues that led to them saving their world from an extraordinary convergence event where essentially different versions of themselves could converge on a particular point, but they managed to prevent it in such a way that their universe was saved, that they saved their universe, and they did so in an extraordinary way. But each individual issue was a story in and of itself in many ways, and there was just wild concepts in every issue. It was single issue stories that also converged on a larger plot that was resolved, and they saved their world at the end. That's really all you need to know. Now, knowing that story and coming into here, you can understand why Chiquita Wagner is so passionate about finding her world, because what we discover here is that Chiquita Wagner, her world, the planetary world, it ended up being essentially what she thought originally was destroyed. And we see the origin of Chiquita Wagner. We see that it's apparent here that after the success of the planetary team in saving their universe at the end of the planetary series, that's all you need to know. They're basically sort of like they're like the almost like the Fantastic Four, if you will, but they're the team that sort of defends that protects their world and the fictional world and other worlds within the multiverse. But something goes wrong. They think everything's going fine, but suddenly they recognize that the end is happening, and Chiquita Wagner is pulled away, and Chiquita Wagner arrives in a DC universe precisely when the new 52 begins. And so just for time-wise, this is very meta. So 2000, it was in September of 2011 where Flashpoint happened. And at the end of Flashpoint, we ended up with the new 52. Well, that ultimately combined the Wildstorm universe, the Vertigo universe, and the DC universe. And in the combination of that, the merging of the Wildstorm, Vertigo, and DC universes led to the new 52. Well, that actually subverts and ultimately destroyed the planetary universe and the Authority one. But the Authority was still around, but the planetary wasn't. The characters of the planetary weren't. So what happened to them? Well, it appears, it is discovered here that Chiquita Wagner, she managed to survive, but she stayed hidden. And what she did is, because it's in her nature and because of her training, she decided to, gain knowledge, see what was going on, see what was wrong. And basically what Chiquita Wagner is, she reminds me a little bit of almost like Pariah in a little bit, but like a good Pariah, in that every time the DC universe reset, whether it was because after New 52 we ended up with Rebirth, after Rebirth we got Metal and then Death Metal. Every time there was sort of a revamp or a rebirth of the DC universe, Chiquita Wagner is pulled into the new universe, and she's always there. She's always a witness to the end of things, but what she's unable to find is her own universe, the planetary universe. Her goal is to find her own universe. And she's obsessed about this, and she knows it's out there. And she ultimately ends up, there's a scene where she actually runs into the Final Knight, who was a character in, I believe, the Metal or the Death Metal series. I didn't have time to refresh my memory on this, but she meets the Final Knight, who I believe is a character in Snyder's and Capello's final or Death Metal series. And the Final Knight basically tells her that they have a lot in common. Like he managed to survive at the end of Death Metal, and she did too. And they sort of run into each other, and he essentially hints to her that it is possible that her world isn't gone. But before she can get more information from the Final Knight, he sort of, there's a change again, and it disappears. This is very meta, but all you really need to know is, and to be very blunt, readers are going to find, readers that are still with this series, because, I don't think the sales are all that high. But for a longtime DC reader like myself, I find this really fascinating. I'm captivated by it. It's very meta, but I think it's kind of cool, because I really think, and I said this about 3 or 4 issues ago, they're dropping hints in this series that I think might lead to what's going to happen in September, because if Chiquita Wagner finds her universe, the planetary universe, and we've already seen the fictional universe where DC characters that are canceled in canceled series go to sort of like meander in obscurity. We saw that in the last issue. If those worlds can be discovered and revitalized or rediscovered, then we might get the planetary back, and something might be amiss in this universe, this new multiverse that we have, this new hypertime multiverse, whatever you want to call it, at the end of Death Metal, whatever, or post-Stark crisis, whatever you want to call it. It's interesting, and at least I find it interesting. Now, for a long-time reader, part of me is like, oh my God, DC, you're really muddying the waters again. I think a lot of readers have maybe given up on all this meta stuff, but I'm interested in it. I find it curious. It does end with her in the quest for her trying to find her world. It hints at her, she's going to be looking into the Hex universe, which I think is a reference to Jonah Hex. And the word Hex alone is when at one point Jonah Hex was in a far-flung future reality. It was a Hex comic book series. So maybe we're going to be incorporating and getting a future version of Jonah Hex. That fascinates me. Now, she says, Jaquita Wagner believes that the answer lies, that she's looking for, the answer lies in the rhythm between the pages and in a place beyond Earth Zero. So the planetary universe, just so you know, the planetary universe was represented by a snowflake with over 196,000 different dimensions. Okay? So, but now the way Jaquita describes it is, imagine all those dimensions imagine a massive multi-dimensional cube looking like a snowflake. And imagine if that was flattened to a piece of paper where it becomes 2 dimensions. Well, now it's like flat and it's like a piece of paper. And when she talks about a place in between the pages, if you could get in between the pages, you can access potentially all those other 196,300 and whatever other dimensions that originally made up that snowflake, and maybe she can find her own world and maybe other worlds that are lost to time as well or seemingly forgotten. And so again, it's not that complicated, but it is definitely meta. She talks about feeling like somebody's reading her. And of course, she's referencing us. We're actually reading her adventures. She feels like somebody's reading her. Batwoman calls her batshit crazy here. I mean, calls her crazy. I mean, she figures that Jaquita belongs in Arkham Asylum because she's Looney Tune. And Batwoman actually ostensibly leaves the Outsiders at the end of this issue because she's just so almost pissed off about it. So, again, and as a reader, I'm intrigued by it, but I can absolutely understand a reader that's stuck with it this long maybe can be a little frustrated. Maybe I'm not. I find it fascinating. I really think that this is a series to watch, and I'm hoping that I'll be rewarded for sticking with this series. I mean, we read them all anyway, but I'm hoping that we're going to be rewarded by the time we get to the end of this. This is going to lead into what's going to be new in September for DC. But I was hoping that you had maybe became a little bit more intrigued after reading this issue, and that maybe you found it a little bit easier to get into, but maybe I'm wrong.
Yeah, maybe I'm overcomplicating it because whenever something gets as meta as this is, I feel like I'm missing something. Like, is it just as simple as the idea that she's, aware that we're reading about her? Maybe I'm, like I said, maybe I'm reading too much into it. As far as the final night, yeah, not a Scott Snyder creation at all. He showed up, his first appearance is in this series. In issue number 5, if you remember, they went to some alternate DC universe. It was a mansion.
With the Batmans.
Yeah.
Right.
And it's that version of Duke Thomas who is the final night. So
okay.
Not a Snyder creation. Okay, up next we have Sinister Sons number 4. This is from writer Peter J. Tomasi. Vasco Gregoff is the artist. Tamara Bonvillain on colors. Rob Lee on letters. Give us your thoughts on this one.
Sorry, I'm just it's my notes here. Well, this I'm pleased to see that we finally have. I was glad to see Sinestro show up, because one of the things that I wanted to happen in this series, Sinister Sons, I actually really wanted there to be some interaction with the fathers. I wanted Sin Son to meet Sinestro, and I really want General Zod to show up, dealing with Lord Zod. Now, I don't know if General Zod's going to show up. We've reviewed that series. Right now, General Zod is in the middle of, he's burnt to a crisp, and he's trying to lead a prison gang in the middle of nowhere, having abandoned his planet and feel betrayed by his son, and his wife's been killed. Lord Zod doesn't even know that. But in this issue, I like that we have a tie-in in this issue with what's going on in the pages of Green Lantern. We got Sinestro here returning to New Karagar, and he's, you can imagine Sinestro is a little bit pissed off because he discovers that the Yellow Lantern has been completely obliterated, and that's the source of his fear. That's of course the power source for his power ring. And all the people of New Karagar, they ask Sinestro to stay because he's their leader. And Sinestro, true, genuine, good, genuine, aggressive leader that he is, agrees with his people. He's touched by the show of affection that his people have for him. He's going to stay and he's going to help them build New Karagar on the premise of fear. And I think we sort of we leave it at that with Sinestro. We leave the scene with Sinestro vowing that whoever destroyed the yellow, the lantern is going to, he's going to find them and they're going to pay dearly. Meanwhile, we go back to the body of the whale where we have Major Tom with Sin Sun and Lorzod, and apparently what's happening, it's kind of weird. They're on this planet where this whale, this space whale, rarely makes an appearance on the planet, but when it does, there's these pirate people that basically hunt it, whalers that want to hunt this space thing, and every time they attack this space whale that they call Melville, as an allusion to Moby Dick, but this Melville whale is attacked, and it's of course, Sin Sun and Major Tom and Lorzod, they want to do their best to protect the whale. And it's interesting insofar as you can see the relationship between Lorzod and Sin Sun sort of slowly develop. They're slowly working. They probably don't even realize it, but they're working together as a team. And they're even working with Major Tom. And I kind of like, you can still, writer Peter Tomasi does a good job, I think, of giving voice to the characters. I enjoyed it. I thought the dialogue was good, clear, crisp. I thought it was funny. I like how it's still the case where I think Sin Sun is clearly the more intelligent of the two. I think Lorzod he's more cocky than he's more cocky, maybe a little bit too cocky for his own good, but he's slowly getting his powers back. And it's clear Lorzod sort of, I think young Lorzod, he defines himself with his powers. And as he starts to get them back more in this issue, his confidence shows more, or rather his cockiness shows, but it doesn't always serve him because he always gets overconfident. And so I like the character work. I particularly love the ending, in that Sinestro finally shows up, but I wish he would have shown up earlier, because I would have liked to have seen more of Sinestro, because it ends up that this space whale, at one point Sin Sun links to the space whale and telepathically communicates with Melville, the whale, the space whale, and the whale sort of like mind melds with Sin Sun and I think fixates on the planet of New Karagar. So the whale sort of hyper jumps and can teleport and teleports itself to New Karagar. And of course, Sinestro sees it in space. And of course, he views it as a potential threat. And then we find ourselves with Sinestro finds himself inside the body of the whale, facing Major Tom, Sin Sun, and Lorzod. But that's how it ends. I think it's a hell of a cliffhanger. I'm really looking forward to the next issue. How will Sinestro react to Sin Sun? Will he even recognize Sin Sun as one of his offspring? I don't actually know. I think this is an open question. I've never viewed Sinestro as somebody who is like who sleeps around a lot or has a lot of sex partners or anything. So maybe he does. I don't know. Does he care if he has offspring? Does Sinestro have a baby in every spaceport, so to speak? I always kind of associated that with Hal Jordan, with apologies to Hal Jordan fans, but I've always sort of, I agree with Grant Morrison's on Hal Jordan idea of Hal Jordan really is, Hal Jordan might very well be pansexual. I kind of ascribed to Grant Morrison's interpretation of Hal Jordan as being sort of like an intergalactic womanizer as well. I'm sure females of all species love pilots, human pilots, on every aspect of the universe. But in any event, I'm really curious to see where this leads. I thought this was a good setup, this issue. I just wish maybe it sped up a little bit. I would have liked to have seen Sinestro earlier in terms of interacting with Sinister Sons, but I thought it was well. I did think it was well done, and I am looking. It gets me more hyped for next issue. So, what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, it definitely feels like a bit of a setup issue. I'm just if I have any nitpick about the series so far, it I don't want to say it's moving slowly, but it's not exactly breaking any speed records here. It's like just when we think something's about to happen, it kind of slows down. And yeah, I really did feel like this issue was more setup than anything else. I agree with you that Sin Sun definitely seems to be the brains, and Lord Zod is definitely the brawn. I'm enjoying Major Tom as a character. The whole Melville thing, Space Whale. I mean, this isn't the first time in DC kind of science fiction based comics we've seen a whale. I think back to those classic Silver Age Legion superhero stories with the whale and what have you. So it's okay, and I do think that the art, like Vasco Grega, David LaFuente has been the artist on the series so far. Gregoff filling in here does a very good job of me. Like if I didn't know, I would have just assumed it was LaFuente. The art is very similar, so I am kind of curious to see what kind of characterization we're going to get for Sinestro. It's been kind of an interesting characterization. He comes across as sort of classically arrogant Sinestro, but like you mentioned, he has empathy for almost like I would say his subjects. They consider him sort of the king, as it were. So that's interesting. I don't know that that Sinestro's arrogance always allows that to come through. So, but I'm a big fan of Peter J. Tomasi. I think he's a fantastic writer. So we'll see how it plays out going forward. Okay.
Yeah.
Oh man. Up
Did
next
you?
we have.
Oh,
Oh, go ahead.
I was going to say before you do that, did you want to make a comment on the Ramona Frandon?
I was gonna save that for the end.
Save that to the end. Okay, I just wanted to make sure we didn't forget it. Okay, yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry about that. Go ahead.
All right. So up next we have Red Hood, The Hill, Part 4, Escalation. Sean Martinbrough is the writer. Sanford Green is the artist. Matt Hearns on colors. Troy Petrie on letters. I don't actually have a lot to say about this book or this series, really, that I haven't said already. I think the characters of The Hill are interesting. This very much feels like a crime police procedural type thing with these different citizens and different business owners and people in the Hill that are trying to be activists in a lot of ways and protect their portion of Gotham from crime and other people who may not have the best interests of the Hill at heart. People that put on sort of God, what's the word I'm looking for? A legitimate face to the world as a business owner or what have you, but really, behind the scenes, they're engaged in criminal activity. I talked about it last issue, how the intonation that Batman doesn't come to the Hill, like that's a part of Gotham that he just, doesn't worry about. I'm like, yeah, that doesn't ring true. And it sort of is proven out in this issue when Batman shows up. But he doesn't have a lot of agency here. It's an interesting characterization that Martinbrough gives to Batman. But I would say even Batman in this story, when he shows up, he does have more agency than Red Hood does. Red Hood is maybe the sort of the least supporting of the supporting characters in this book, and yet it's called Red Hood. That's like the first name on the title. So again, I just think it's an interesting story and interesting characters that Martinbrough is telling the story of here, but and they can't market it as The Hill and just tell the story of these kind of no-name characters because people aren't going to bother to give it a chance. So you kind of almost wonder, should they have called it Batman the Hill? Well, I guess not, because he shows up even less than Red Hood. But like I said, when he shows up in this issue, he has a little bit more to say and a little more to do, it definitely feels like Red Hood is on the sidelines. So yeah, this series for me, I just it's one of those things. I think I'm not gonna know if I really enjoyed it until it's all said and done. Um, but I've said before, I'm not a fan of Sanford Green's art. But that being said, it does suit the style of story, and the coloring here suits the style of story that Sean Martinbrough is telling. I wish that Martinbrough was drawing it himself, but I know he's not the fastest, and so that probably has a lot to do with it. So yeah, this is just okay for me. It's never a book that I look forward to reading. Um, and even that being said, this was even a down issue, kind of below average, even for this series. Because again, it's all like a lot of the books this week. It's all set up of what's coming next. So we'll have to see how that plays out at some point. What were your thoughts on it?
I'm much more positive than you are on this. I quite enjoy this. I I do think that if Sean Martinborough was writing any other title that didn't deal with these relatively obscure characters, his writing would be better appreciated. Uh, that's just how I feel, and that's because I'm enjoying the story. I'm surprised. I'm genuinely surprised. I got to say this. I actually think Sean Martinborough has done a better job of getting me into these new characters of the Hill. They're primarily, Black America, and done a better job than I find myself more intrigued with this story than I am with the Milestone universe, at least on par with that. Maybe, and I'm actually enjoying this story a little bit more. Even, I like the fact that we have this. It's a story of a we have Demetrius Corley Jr. He's the gangster, or he's actually legitimate. His father was somebody, it's revealed, who was caught by Batman years ago, and so he's a next generation quasi gangster. He's legitimate, but yet he owns this sneaker place called God Mode, a new brand of sneakers. So he runs charities, of which Wayne Foundation is contributing to, as Batman reveals. But he's also pissed off another gang member by the name of Omar, who has this Grand Imperial gang, and I think the art here is actually at times quite very well done, because the artist Sanford Green, I really like how he draws Omar DeSeco and his Grand Imperial gang. They look very intimidating. At one point, Omar wants to essentially kill Denise Marlowe, who is Dana Marlowe's sister, and Denise is a reporter. He wants to kill her because his daughter was killed when the God Mode sneaker place was attacked in the first issue. And we learn a little bit more about Dana Marlowe. She is in fact an acrobat, so we get a little bit of a justification for why her skills are what they are. She was once a gymnast, and she also, of course, her friends make up the watch, and you can see what's happening here, and the idea of the Hill, and you said it already. Well, the idea that Batman would neglect a part of Gotham is absurd. Batman protects all of Gotham. Well, that's sort of touched on a bit. It's touched on more than once, particularly by Jason Todd, he's making the Hill his focus. Batman is there. Batman's making it his focus too. There's this other character called Lenny Kreck, who has the ability to sort of create monsters in his mind. And it's at one point Jason Todd wants to give Batman shit because he released Lenny, instead of putting this Lenny Kreck character in Arkham Asylum. He took him out and put him in the Hill because he says as long as Lenny is left alone, his imagination doesn't usually create monsters. But unfortunately, the gangs of the Hill weaponized this young Lenny, and that's been causing part of the problems that have led to some of these attacks. And in any event, there's all these plots, and they do come together well, in my opinion, and I'm really enjoying this story, and I want to give props to Sean Martinborough for that. And I think the art really has grown on me. Matt Herms on the colors has done a really good job, and yeah, I'm actually I had serious reservations when I heard this series because I asked, why does it exist? And it did seem like an afterthought that they just wanted, they already had it done and maybe they just wanted to push it out. But I'm glad it is because it is a good story. Unfortunately, I agree with you that probably not a lot of people it's not getting the focus it deserves. And, but I do think it's one of those comics that I think deserves more attention. And unfortunately, in this particular comic industry climate, it's probably not getting it. So, but I did enjoy this issue.
Yeah, again, it's not that I'm not enjoying it. I still question its need to exist. But again, I think it's one of those things where once it's all said and done, I'm probably going to enjoy it. But I think I need the ending before I can go back and, or maybe it's just a story that I'll enjoy more reading it all at once. So anyway, up next we have Batman Dylan Dog #3. This is the final issue. Roberto Recchioni is the writer. Gigi Cavanego and Werther Del Edra handled the art. Giovanni Nero and Laura Ciondolini are the colorist. Pat Brosso handles the letters. Yeah, this is an Italian creative team. Let me just put that out there. So here's what's interesting. I really overall have enjoyed the Dylan Dog series. Dylan Dog, for those not familiar, is an Italian comic book kind of occult investigator, sort of similar to Constantine, but maybe without quite so much of the baggage that Constantine has. So I have enjoyed it. That being said, I think this is sort of the least. This issue has the least action of any of the issues, which is, I guess, interesting in a lot of ways. That's the case. I don't know why that's the case, but yeah, the ending here, it just feels very anticlimactic in a lot of ways. So I'm not exactly sure why that is, but that's just how it came across to me. I still enjoyed the interaction between Batman and Dylan Dog. I thought overall the story was really strong. I would love to see a team up of these characters again sometime in the future. So I guess we'll see if they ever team up again. But overall, yeah, I thought this was pretty strong. But yeah, I just wonder about whether or not this was the way to end the story. Like it wasn't a bad ending. It's not like we didn't get answers to our questions or what have you, but and it's not like it wrapped up super conveniently either. But it just, the ending wasn't action packed the way most of the series was in a lot of ways. So I don't know. It was it just felt a little bit strange to me. So anyway, what did you think of this overall?
Well, I think I think you're very careful in your comments about not wanting to give too much away, but I feel compelled to be able to give a little bit more detail on the ending because I thought it was very, very interesting. Because I've said this before for long-time listeners. I've said this phrase about myself before. I'm a sucker for a good metaphor, and I think this has that, and this also has that wonderful phrase, that subversion of expectation. I mean, the Killix, Dylan Dog's primary nemesis is this Killix. Batman's is the Joker. Well, the Joker retrieved Killix's soul from hell, and the last issue was basically Batman Batman and Dylan Dog, with the help of John Constantine, sort of discovering that Killix's soul has been released from hell, and the Joker retrieved it. Well, here the Joker brings Killix back to Gotham, and he figures him and Killix are going to have a great time. I mean, I retrieved a guy with a soul just like mine. But Killix rejects the Joker because the Joker is about chaos. And the Killix character, now I'm not an expert on Dylan Dog's villains because I just became familiar with the character of Dylan Dog and his mythology with this series. But apparently Killix craves order. He's order. He always needs to be in control, and everything has to be ordered. So while he was a killer and a madman, he did things in a particular way, apparently. Unlike the Joker, who embraces chaos, the Killix is about order. And so the Joker didn't like being rejected by Killix, and so as Killix goes about his own business in Gotham, trying to catch up and trying to sort of regain his sanity or regain his killer instinct, because something is off with Killix. It's because he was in hell, his soul, it's almost like he's looking for a soul. Something's missing in him so we don't really know what it is, but Killix himself feels off. And the Joker basically actually goes and warns Dylan Dog, and after Batman beats him up, the Joker essentially almost turns himself in, lets Batman catch him, warns Dylan Dog and Batman about what Killix is doing. And then in order to lure out Killix, they use the bat signal and to lure him to Crime Alley. And it's very interesting that, Killix just gives up. And I think that's what was so surprising. There was no great big action scene. Killix was handily defeated, and he seemed to just sort of give up, and it wasn't much of a fight. And then what I found very interesting is, we had the demon showed up again, Constantine, Batman, and they were at Madam's house, and they essentially, instead of putting Killix into Arkham Asylum, Dylan Dog basically told Batman, I don't think that's a good idea. He's just going to escape. And Dylan Dog gave the argument that, hey man, you can't do this. Every time Arkham Asylum being a revolving door, Killix is just going to escape. It's odd that at the end there, they instead of sending Killix to hell, they almost send him to heaven. And he finds heaven to be a hell for him. It's almost as if Killix enjoyed being in hell, but they put him in heaven at the end. And the heaven is what made him, it's the worst punishment for him. But it seemed to be something that like I say, it's an odd ending, but it's like he said, can you a place of peace here where everything is in harmony and every soul is complete? Can you imagine what such a place is like for me? And of course, it's his hell, because he took souls. He took souls and killed people whose souls he felt were incomplete and in his own insanity. But when he's in a place where all those souls are there, if you're on heaven and earth, but you still maintain your insanity, that could be the ultimate hell for somebody who has psychopathy. And so I thought that was just very interesting. Definitely subverted my expectation, but I thought it was interesting, and it actually makes me curious about exploring other aspects of Dylan Dog's mythology, to be honest.
Yeah, I mean, it was an interesting ending, but again, almost like a psychological ending, right? Rather than like any kind of action pack. It wasn't. I mean, I guess maybe I'm selling a little short. Batman, it does say that Batman, has to keep hitting him and hitting him and hitting him, and he like won't give up or whatever. I guess that's action. I don't know. I just felt the ending of this was just felt a little weird to me. So I don't know. Maybe it's just me. Maybe I'm just being overly critical. So anyway, let's move on. Up next, we have Green Lantern issue number 11. I can't believe this is up to issue 11 already. It doesn't feel like it. Maybe because I love this series so much. It's like I want more of it. And it feels like it just doesn't feel like it's been out for a year. Although it's been over a year, actually, because we had those 2 Night Terrors issues. So anyway, written by Jeremy Adams, art by Zermanico and Ammon Kane Nahelapan, colors by Romuto Fajardo Jr., letters by Dave Sharp. Really, really strong art, like really strong. I thought it was fantastic. And there's 2 narratives here. Back on Earth, Carol Danvers, Carol Ferris, not Captain Marvel, but Carol Ferris, making what might be the worst choice of her life or what have you, deciding to get married to this guy because her professional life has fallen apart. Ferris Aircraft having lost a bunch of government contracts. You can kind of understand, why that would be happening, based on just, again, things not going her way. But also flashing back and remembering the person that she really wants to be with clearly is Hal. remembering back to her relationship with him and what have you. So all that's pretty interesting. But then meanwhile on Oa, um, Lord Premier Theranos is kind of stands revealed as being this basically horrible person that he is. But what's interesting about it is that the other council, who supposedly, are people that you would think would want to kind of push back against the horrible things that he's doing. Well, come to find out, Theranos has actually replaced all of the other council members with Durlans. So even though he kind of stands revealed, and you think, okay, the rebellion, the Lantern Rebellion against the United Planets, is going to stand revealed, and he's going to be able to have his comeuppance, if you will. That's all kind of thrown to the wayside because all of a sudden, come to find out, Theranos has replaced all these guys. So a really bad spot for the Lanterns to be in. Just when you think that they're going to, have justice and Theranos is going to have to answer for his crimes, it turns out he's been one step ahead of them all along. He kind of set this up, knowing Hal would come back, and whether or not he knew Hal's ring couldn't be affected by the multicolored lanterns, remains to be seen. But yeah, he kind of set this up in such a way that it would be a situation where the Lanterns rebellion would think, yeah, we're going to bring Theranos to justice. We're going to present his crimes to the other council members, and Theranos is going to be removed from power. No, come to find out, that's not what's going on at all. Theranos was one step ahead of him. So really interesting stuff from Jeremy Adams, once again proving what a fantastic writer he is. Such great ideas. So from being trapped on Earth to feeling super cosmic, and yet still going back to Earth at various times, talking about what's going on with Carol Ferris. And there is a moment early on in the book where it basically shows Theranos taking out the lantern for the Zamorans.
The Star Sapphire lantern.
The Star Sapphires, of which we know Carol Ferris was a Star Sapphire at one point. So their lantern, their power battery has been destroyed, but yet somehow, in the nick of time, right before Carol says "I do," or actually maybe it's after she says "I do," but before she's officially pronounced as being married, a sapphire ring, a violet lantern ring, shows up there at her wedding, and obviously that makes her think of Hal. So we may be getting Carol Ferris as Star Sapphire in the upcoming issues, which I love. I love Carol Ferris as Star Sapphire. It's fantastic. So anyway, this continues to be a fantastic book. What are your thoughts on it?
Jeremy Adams did a great job on this one, and the art really is fantastic. And I love the flashback. I love the flashback of a young Hal Jordan. Carol Ferris is thinking back when she was a teenager and Hal was a young teenager, and he gets in trouble at school and he steals the principal's car and he picks up Carol Ferris and they drive off to Vegas, and they get stopped by the cops, and but that's just who Hal Jordan has always been reckless, and quite frankly, it's nice to see that. I mean, longtime readers, we kind of know Hal Jordan, we know his past, but I don't know if it's often we get a flashback of that teenage Hal Jordan who, he was still carefree. He was still he was reckless. He did crazy things, and he had a zest for life, and he craves adventure, Hal Jordan. And I think in the end, ultimately, that's what Carol Ferris craves as well. And Jeremy Adams does such a good job, and Zermanico and Amanke and Nahul Pan on the art just do a really good job of conveying the emotions, especially the subdued emotions that Carol Ferris is feeling. As per Nate, her fiance, she convinces him to let's go to Vegas, just like it was a young Hal Jordan to convince a younger Carol Ferris to get in the car, let's go to Vegas just because I've never been there, and and who's going to stop us? Here Carol Ferris is telling Nate, he's such per Nate he seems clueless. He doesn't seem to have any clue that he's just along for the ride, literally, in Carol Ferris's fantasy, because he's not Hal Jordan, man. Nobody's Hal Jordan in Carol Ferris's mind, and it works so well. And symbolically at the end there, just before she says "I do," just before they're pronounced, man and wife, all of a sudden that star sapphire ring appears, and she looks at it, and of course, star sapphire being symbolic of the power of love, and the first words out of her mouth when she sees it is Hal. It's just so obvious who she's in love with, who she should be marrying, and that's only, like I said, that's only half the story. The other half of the story, which I won't go into because you did a good job explaining it, takes place on Oa with the Green Lanterns confronting Lord Theros and the Council of the United Planets to find out that Durlans, shapeshifters, have taken over the United Planets. And just for those who may not know, they're shapeshifters. And if you think of a Durlan, think of Chameleon Boy on the Legion of Superheroes. He was a Durlan. He's a shapeshifter. So I thought this was really great. And I also like the backup, too. You want to talk about that?
Yeah. It's I'm not the biggest Guy Gardner fan, right? But when you get Guy Gardner drawn by Kevin Maguire, it's hard not to smile from ear to ear.
Yeah, it's really good.
Yeah, I do, and we have talked about it, how I'm not sure how well it works with the Zenar, with Lobo not being the last Zenarian anymore. I'm just not sure that that's the best choice. I sort of feel like he works better as sort of the last man standing, as it were. But that being said, this idea of Guy thinking that he's captured Lobo and then maybe it's not Lobo, and just it showcases the ineptitude of Guy Gardner, and kind of the braggadocio of Guy Gardner really, really well. So, and again, Guy in the hands of Kevin Maguire is always a lot of fun. So it's great to see Jeremy sort of channeling the Giffen DeMatteis version of Guy Gardner here. And it does sort of bridge the gap between what's going on with Green Lantern, which has become a cosmic book, even though it started off and Jeremy had to have Hal confined to Earth, and what's going on over in the Superman books with the House of Brainiac and leading up to absolute power and what have you. Because, if it's Brainiac and it's a cosmic story, why wouldn't the Green Lantern book tie into it? So with this backup, it makes a lot of sense that that's what's going on here. So yeah, I am enjoying the backup. And again, the art is just fantastic. So what were your thoughts on the backup?
If I didn't know better, I think Kevin Maguire exaggerated the squareness of Guy Gardner's head. I mean, his hairdo was awful, but it was so classic Guy Gardner. He just looks like a meticulously cut like square pie for his head. It just looks. It was just so well done. The art. This was funnier than hell. Guy Gardner is so stupid. He wouldn't, heck, all he'd have to do is, just ask his ring if this was Lobo, and the ring would tell him, I would think. But obviously it's not Lobo, and I think he kind of knows that, but he's kind of playing stupid. And ultimately at the end, he even lets this character who's not Lobo actually communicate with to do the communicating with the United Planets to let them know where they're at. And of course, all he does is he sends a signal somewhere else, and a bunch of bounty hunters now are going to try to get the bounty on who they think is Lobo. And then of course at the end, Brainiac shows up, because we know from the House of Brainiac storyline that all the Zarnians are being scooped up by Brainiac for the machinations and the plot line that's going on over in that event. So it was a lot of fun. The biggest, the story was good. Jeremy Adams did just a great job with the story. I thought the dialogue was great. It was funny. And then just heightened, of course, with great memories of the classic Justice League International, thanks to the art by Kevin Maguire. And Rosemary Cheatham, who I'm the colorist. Her colors are really good too. She colors John Stewart's pardon me, Guy Gardner's hair very well. It's a very bright orange, so kudos to colorist Rosemary Cheatham, who I don't think I'm familiar with. That's the first time I think I've read her name. So, but
Sounds vaguely familiar, but yeah, I can't say for sure. So
yeah.
anyway, let's move on. Up next, we have Suicide Squad Dream Team issue number 3 from writer Nicole Maines, pencils by Eddie Barrows and Jose Luis, inks by Eber Ferreira and Adriano Di Benedetto, colors by Adriano Lucas, and letters by Becca Carey. Give us your thoughts on this one.
I was, I've been. First, I want to say I actually like all 3 covers here. I like cover A, B, and C. The standard cover I really like because Eddie Burrows does his doing cover A's, and it's just amazing. The cover A has Bizarro on there with Dreamer and Harley Quinn in both arms, and it's just beautifully illustrated, beautifully colored. And cover B has Dreamer and Harley sort of like embracing each other, sort of pissed off, staring at each other. It looks sexy and sort of like bad girlish as well. And then cover C has a badass Amanda Waller who looks pretty kick-ass too, and it targeted and insights, and it actually, so kudos to the covers. I don't always compliment the covers, but I had to do this time. This is last issue ended with essentially Dreamer getting pissed off at Amanda Waller. We know that Dreamer is a precog, and she can sort of see the future, so she knows what's coming, and she does reveal some of that this issue. She can see that the plot line, the general plot line of what will become absolute power. She sees remnants of that because she's a precog. That's why Amanda Waller wants her on the team. And Amanda Waller makes it clear in this issue because she's sending the Suicide Squad in. She's sending Deadeye, Harley Quinn, Bizarro, Black Alice, and the Clock King there. She's sending them in to get Dreamer because in Amanda Waller's eyes, Dreamer is not expendable. And that's a rarity. She's not expendable. So Waller considers her very important. But not only important, but Waller seems to have a tremendous amount of respect for Dreamer's powers, which are very interesting because Amanda Waller refuses to fall asleep. She's afraid to fall asleep because she seems to be afraid of what Dreamer might discover in her mind. I mean, why? I mean, it's a rare moment of almost fear in Amanda Waller. I mean, Amanda Waller always seems to find a way of positioning herself so no one can get one up on her. But for Amanda Waller to avoid sleep because she's afraid of what Dreamer might discover in her head, I find that very, very interesting because Dreamer already knows a number of things already. Also, this is just me, I don't know about any other readers out there, but I've always wondered what powers Dreamer has. Kudos to writer Nicole Maines for spelling it out. We actually saw the dossier in this issue. I admit I didn't know fully what her powers were. Dreamer has precognition, energy manipulation, astral projection, dream walking. And she's got a power called One Iromancy, which I don't know what that means. One Iromancy. I'll have to Google that. But in any event, it was nice to see that, and I got more of an appreciation for Dreamer. I got to admit, one thing I wasn't expecting from this series, I came in with a little bit of a bias against Dreamer in terms of this is going to be a forced prop up of a character. I actually feel like Dreamer's earned my respect here over the last year or two of me reading her stories. So I want to give Nicole Maines props for that because I actually like how Dreamer's character is being developed here. I like how Amanda Waller, because Dreamer left in frustration, she left the team. She didn't want to be part of it. Waller intentionally attacked her hometown and created a sort of a race riot against the alien immigrants that are in this town of Parma, just to sort of draw Dreamer out. Dreamer's trying to prevent a lot of the. Dreamer uses her precog abilities and knows that a school's about to start on fire, and she goes to the school to rescue many of the students. And ultimately, it's there upon rescuing the students where she's incapacitated by the Suicide Squad because they tell her that, look, the Suicide Squad is even on her side, more or less. They know that Waller is a threat, but they also know that there's nothing they can do. And because sort of their lives are at stake, if they don't do what they're told, they need to take Dreamer in. And so it's again the hype builds, and I'm 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 still not going to say I'm a huge Amanda Waller fan, but I have a more appreciation. This is getting me. This is one of the better issues. I think this is my favorite issue of Suicide Squad Dream Team so far, and I actually got something out of this issue, and I particularly liked at one point where Dreamer utilized. There was a bunch of unconscious. At one point, there was a bunch of unconscious rioters that were knocked out, and the Suicide Squad walked. They were looking for Dreamer, and the Dreamer was able to use her dreaming abilities to go into the dreams of the people that were unconscious and use the dreams of the unconscious people against the Suicide Squad. I thought that was so choreographed so well. I thought that was what an awesome concept. I thought that was so well done, utilizing the dreams of the people that were knocked out to sort of attack the Suicide Squad. And it did it in such a way that I thought that I could see where Dreamer is. She's more of a threat than I ever realized before. So again, kudos to Nicole Maines for I'm starting to see just the power levels of this character, and I really appreciated it. And I thought this was a well done issue, well drawn, and I'm looking forward to how this wraps up, leading into Absolute Power. So, what do you think?
Yeah, I really enjoyed it as well. The only thing, and this isn't necessarily a criticism or a nitpick, it's just something that I worry about. Um, there are those out there that don't care for Dreamer as a character because she's trans, and so I worry about them labeling her as a Mary Sue because, um, yeah, Nicole spells it out in this issue just how formidable Dreamer can be, not just with her precognition, but with her, fighting ability and some other things that she's able to do. And when you stop and think about it, why wouldn't somebody who knows the future be a really good fighter? You would know when to dodge, and you would know, kind of where someone's going to be ahead of time. Now I get it, if you're talking about Dreamer as sort of a predecessor and ancestor of Dream Girl from the Legion of Superheroes, then it's like in their dreams when they get the visions and that sort of thing. But it doesn't have to be that way necessarily, and so that's the only thing that I worry about. But I personally love it. I personally love that Dreamer is this badass, basically, because part of the thing is I don't think DC has enough really fantastically powerful female characters. And then even when they do, oftentimes they don't get credit, right? Like Batman himself, I saw this on Twitter last week. Batman himself has admitted, it's in canon, he said it in comics, that if he got in a fight with Cassandra Cain head up, he would lose. Cassandra Cain would beat him. And yet there's people that argue against that. Say, no, but there's no way, but she hasn't trained, blah, blah. No, that's the point. She was raised with body movement as her language. That's the thing that she inherently understands better than anybody. That's why Bruce even admits it, and yet people can't accept that. Like it's ridiculous to me. So anyway, not really here nor there, but I do appreciate that we're getting some powerful female characters. So
Mhm.
then in terms of the art, I talk all the time about how this art team is sort of a dream team when it comes to how great they are with their art. So, I enjoy that aspect of the character or of the series as well. I'm not a big fan of this version of Bizarro, though. I will say that. But again, minor nitpick. Overall, I'm really enjoying the series.
Yeah.
It definitely feels like it's leading into absolute power. And I also give Nicole, I don't think Amanda Waller, we've talked about this before, I don't think she can be redeemed. I don't think she can be made to be warm and fuzzy. I appreciate the effort from Nicole here, trying to, make it, make Amanda a little more sympathetic as a character. But yeah, overall, I don't think it works. I just don't. She's just not a character that I'm ever going to see as anything but a villain at this point. And she's even saying, in this issue, I'm one of the good guys, whatever. No, you're not. You're
Yeah.
not. You haven't been for a really long time. We all know it. But again, I appreciate the effort. I appreciate the effort from Nicole
Eh,
to try to make Amanda feel a little more just allow us to understand, a little more what her motivations are or what have you. But to me, she's just outright evil, and the fact that she's trying to steal everybody's powers pretty much says it all at this
Yeah.
point. So
I will add that I think it's the first time it's been revealed that Gamora, the island nation of Gamora, is being used, will be used by Amanda Waller, and it's confirmed in this issue. She's using it for when she as a super prison. So ultimately, it looks like Gamora will be the base of operations for Amanda Waller, and she's going to use it as a super prison for when she takes over the world. And I think that was Harley Quinn that said that in the issue. But anyway, so I thought that was interesting. That might be that undoubtedly would be a plot point moving forward, moving into absolute power.
yeah, good point. Okay, up next we have Batman and Robin, issue number 9. Joshua Williamson is the writer. Nicola Samegia handles art in pages 6 through 21, and then Simone DeMeo, pages 1 through 5 and 22 through 24. Rex Locus on colors, along with Giovanna Nero. And there's no letter listed, so I'm not sure about that. Um, I go hot and cold on this series. First of all, every time I see Simone DeMeo's art, it just doesn't do it for me. Like I think about, um, you know, maybe I'm dating myself, but I think back to the art that we had in the Robin book, the Tim Drake Robin series back in the '90s, Tom Lyle, and I think, man, if Tom Lyle was, because to me this is a little bit more of a Robin story. At least the focus to me has been a little more on Robin, a little more on Damien's past and what have you than it has on Batman. Um, and so I think back like, and the other reason I guess maybe it's calling back to me to that classic series is the fact that that was Tim Drake in high school, right? And here we've got Damian Wayne in high school, and so again, I think that's where my mind is making the connections. And I think, man, if Tom Lyle was drawing this, I think I would just enjoy it so much more with that DC house style, and even more than the line work, it's just the colors. Everything uh, with DeMeo is purple and blue and pink, and it just doesn't suit a Batman book in my mind. I just don't like it. It really bothers me. So that being said, the story itself is okay. I feel like at this point it's started to drag on just a little bit too long in my mind. I wish it was moving a little bit faster. Um, but it is interesting, sort of anticlimactic when it is revealed that, sure enough, Damien's suspicions are correct. The teacher at a school that he suspects of being Mistress Harsh, who's denied it all this time. Then all of a sudden, she denies it once more, and Damien goes, "I know you're lying." And she's like, "Oh, okay, you got me." It felt a little wonky. Um, and again, or I guess I should say one of the teachers is actually the Principal Stone, but then one of the other teachers is revealed as Shush. Her origin is pretty hokey. She started off as this character that really intrigued me and I thought had a lot of potential, and now she seems like just forgettable
She
in a
seems
lot
like
of ways.
a lush is what she seems like to me.
Yeah, so I don't know. Like, part of what we loved about the series early on was the interaction between Damien and Bruce. We haven't gotten much of that in the last couple of issues. Maybe it's because Flatline has shown up. I don't know. It just the series feels meandering. That's the best way I can put it. And I don't think that the art by Simone DeMeo does anything um, to adjust that. I think if you had more impactful art, you could have a situation where um, it was it didn't feel meandering. Like it felt like it was more action packed. There was more going on. So I don't know. Again, maybe it's just me. Maybe I'm being overly critical, but this was a bit of a down issue for me in a lot of ways. So anyway, what were your thoughts on it?
I enjoyed this issue, although I will say that Shush I thought ended up being sort of a little bit of a disappointment. But we did get but the origin of Shush I it did possess a degree of verisimilitude to me. I mean, Shush really is, it's revealed she's Mrs. Hall. And Thomas Elliot, who was Hush, who was her mentor. And basically, she always, when Thomas Elliot was defeated, when Hush was defeated by Batman, she lost her medical license, and she blamed Batman for it. She ultimately ended up joining the cult of Man-Bat. But then when Batman saved Shush in the previous issue, she had a change of heart and realized that Batman was really a nice guy, betrayed Man-Bat, and she ended up being gutted for it. And in this issue, she basically, as Miss Hall, she warns Damian at the school, while at the same time that Damian and what's his girlfriend's name? Flatline, thank you. Damian and Flatline discover that Principal Stone is indeed Mistress Harsh, Damian's former teacher when he was under his mother's care with the League of Assassins. And so a lot happens this issue. Damian finally got to hit his school bully. He didn't have to pretend not to be Robin anymore, so he enjoyed that. I enjoyed watching that issue as well. I actually enjoyed even artistically how that scene played out. I'm going to admit that over its sheer osmosis, that the influence of manga and anime, those types of art, the merging of them or whatever, is slowly starting to sort of, get through me, because have an effect on me. I'm starting to appreciate it more, and it's growing on me. And there's definitely sort of a manga style here and in the art, which I thought was, which I think is pretty cool, and it worked for me. I don't know. I don't know what's going to happen. When I called Shush a lush, I guess what I mean is, I was expecting Shush maybe to be more of a villain, but she's definitely not. And part of me is a little disappointed. So as much as I thought it was a nice scene, it was a nice origin, I do think that. I don't know. Maybe this is my own unpopular opinion, or I don't know what people think in general, but I'll just share that I think DC needs more villainy, more actual evil. I still feel that way. And I wish Shush was just a little bit more hardcore badass. And what's wrong with just being a pure villain? There seems to be this reluctance. I still feel that there's a surprising reluctance to let evil be evil. And because now, what is Shush? Shush is a lush. She really is. She's this is a disappointment. So even though, to me, Principal Stone is the one, she's kick-ass, and Shush is, well, now what? We have another unpowered martial art member of the extended Bat family, and she's a teacher at, I don't know. I don't know what Joshua Williamson's plans are for Shush, but it's doesn't really matter now, because she's not really a villain, and she, I think, I question. I would have liked to have seen her been a little bit more hardcore here, and I would have liked to have seen Flatline be a little bit more active. I hope Flatline is more active in the subsequent issues, and maybe next issue we'll get a battle scene between Flatline versus Principal Stone. I think that would be kind of cool, and but we'll see where it goes. But I had a lot of fun this issue. I had a lot of fun. I can't complain. I thought this was a fun issue, and with respect to my comments on Shush, I might just be nitpicking there, but with Poison Ivy going the way of the hero, and I just want to. We need more evil in the DC universe, and without apology.
Unapologetic evil. More unapologetic evil.
Yeah.
Okay, up next we have Batman and Robin and Howard, issue number 3 of 4 from writer-artist Jeffrey Brown. Again, this is for younger readers. It does a good job of being approachable. I do have a little bit of a hard time believing that Batman can be locked for weeks at a time. It seems like weeks, at least a week, almost the entirety of their school break, their school vacation here, where Batman's stuck in a room and can't get out. Reinforced door, and his bat phone runs out of power, and it just feels a little bit awkward. But again, if you're a younger reader, It's clear that Jeffrey Brown wants the readers to identify with Damien and with Howard, and I think that that works, and I think probably a lot of kids in elementary school can um, relate to having frenemies, if you will, which is what Damien and Howard are to start the series. But then it certainly seems like they start becoming friends, which I think makes sense. So overall, this is a fun story. I mean, there's a reason that it was a bestseller, and I think overall, yeah, it makes a lot of sense as a young reader book that's kind of a gateway into some more mature comics later on. It's certainly night and day from the Batman and Robin book that we just talked about. I'll say that for sure. So, what are your thoughts on it?
I don't have much to add. Although I will say though, it's you got to wonder if are we going to see the debut of Howard in the mainstream DC universe at some point? I mean, it wouldn't surprise me. I mean, with the growing popularity, and in fact, arguably from I mean, we're not. I'm not. I don't think any of us can say for certain exactly what the sales are, but Batman, Robin, and Howard, and all those young, those types of young adult graphic novelizations, they seem to be very popular, and so we have a lot of non-powered characters in the DC universe, and it'd be interesting to see if these characters ever make an appearance in the more of the mainstream DC universe. We'll have to wait and see.
Yeah, I mean, it makes sense that they would, like you said. They are, although I don't know. I mean, the success of the success of this has actually led to is the fact that there's going to be a second series, like Batman, Robin, and Howard Spring Break, I think is what it's called. I interviewed Jeffrey Brown last year at San Diego Comic Con. So yeah, I don't know. I mean, we certainly see times where versions of characters from other media show up. Like we had I can't even remember her name now, but the second Batwoman from the live action TV show showed up after the initial actress that was playing Kate Kane dropped out.
Yeah.
So anyway, let's go ahead and move on. Up next, oh, man, Blue Beetle. This was a bit of a disappointment for me. Pinnacle of Achievement, Chapter 2. Josh Trujillo is the writer. Adrian Gutierrez is the artist. Will Quintana on colors. Lucas Catoni on letters. What I will say is I was very excited at the end of the issue to see Ted Kord back, what his relationship is with his sister, how that's going to play out, how he's going to kind of reintegrate, how Jaime will react when he finds out Ted is back. That's all good stuff. What I don't like, and why I'm kind of a little bit disappointed in this title, is the art. I think the art in this book, when it started off as a 6-issue, so we had a 6-issue series, and then we had the ongoing since then. The art on the 6th issue, it was much cleaner, and it sort of got a little messier as it went along, and I kind of chalked that up to just Gutierrez trying to keep up. But I've mentioned before about how he does that ink splatter thing, and that's gotten more and more pronounced as the series has gone on, and that's only continued. And then the other part of that, in addition, is that throughout this issue, the backgrounds are almost non-existent. There are so many panels where there's no background, and then there's panels where not only is there no background, but the characters are just in silhouette, which tells me that he's struggling to keep up. And I just, again, I think back to kind of classic Blue Beetle, various times, whether it be Cully Hamner on Jaime Reyes, or I even go back to Paris Cullins, who's going to be at Phoenix Fan Fusion next weekend when Rocky will be in town and we'll be there. Can't wait to meet. But I think about that Paris Cullins art, and it wasn't necessarily house style, but it was clean and it was approachable, and it made for a great story. This is messy, and it doesn't do the story any favors by being messy. I mean, look at the page if you're watching us on, go back, Rocky, go back to that page you're just on. If you're watching us on YouTube, like, look, there's no background here. You've got an 8 grid panel on the page with hardly anything. Like, I can't imagine it took more than an hour or I to draw this. Like I don't. I'm just not sure. I'm not sure what's going on, but the I feel like the art is letting the story down because I feel like the story is interesting. I love that Trujillo is really kind of pulling in, all these different facets of Blue Beetle, and I appreciate how much he not only loves Jaime, but the respect he has for Ted Cord, and so that's why I was so excited to see Ted show back up, and I'm excited to see where it goes. But I just think it needs better art, and if Gutierrez would just go back to what he was doing in the beginning of the series, of the limited series, I think he would be fine. But the art has gotten too messy for my taste. Just don't care for it. So anyway, what are your thoughts on this?
Well, I enjoy the story. I've been enjoying this story. From issue one. I think that it's been messy at times. It has, and the art. There have been some issues where I struggled to figure out exactly what was going on in the action sequences. And however, for the most part, I figured it out, and I was helped along at times because of the dialogue. But it never, in my view, I still managed to enjoy the story, and I still think that writer Josh Trujillo, basically he has managed to to put a lot of story into 9 issues. You're getting a lot of bang for your buck in 9 issues, and while it has been a little bit uneven at times, I think he has expanded the Blue Beetle mythology. And I do think this is unique. This isn't a ripoff. It doesn't feel to me like a ripoff of the Power Rangers, even though at first it's like, oh, we're going to get different colored Beetles, just like the Power Rangers. It's like, no, each one of these, this is very different. And in this issue, we see further differences because one of the, I think it's the Green Beetle, the Naja Day or whatever, she gave up her Beetle to Victoria Cord, who used it to create this creation called the Pinnacle, this robot called the Pinnacle that Victoria Cord wanted. Victoria Cord basically wants to protect people. Victoria Cord's heart's in the right place, but she, by her own admission, she doesn't. She's one of those people who are sure, while her heart might be in the right place, you'd never know it. She comes across as someone who doesn't have a heart, but she does. We saw a couple of cracks in her armor when Ted Cord was almost killed, but he was brutally assaulted by the Blood Scarab. And you could tell she was emotional, and yet she's not someone who's prone to show a lot of emotions, but she does care. And I thought character-wise, I really thought what I liked about this particular issue was how Victoria, which to my surprise, she actually destroys Pinnacle. She created Pinnacle using a bunch of various alien tech, and including the Green Beetle there, the Naja, whatever the hell it was, and then decided to destroy it after talking to Jaime, and she did that and it was the right thing to do. Unfortunately, remnants of Pinnacle were still around, and ultimately it found its way into another part of the city, and so Pinnacle is exploring and has rebuilt itself by the end of the issue, and following its original programming of destroying all alien threats, which unfortunately is warped now, and this Pinnacle will attack any alien living in Palmyra City, which is where a lot of the aliens sort of reside, dealing as a result of the fallout from the adventures regarding the Reach from issue 1 till now. Everything falls into place here. It might feel a little bit sloppy, but I've enjoyed the ride, and I particularly enjoyed the moment between Victoria and Ted, who a good sibling moment where Ted Cord says to Victoria that, it's up to the Cords now to fix this, because him and his sister, he wants Victoria, he loves his sister, and I think, Victoria seems to be a little bit surprised that that's how Ted feels, and Victoria needs to open up. I think the evolution of Victoria Cord's character has been something that has been well developed over these 9 issues. and Trujillo, I think, should get some credit for that. And quite frankly, I've been more interested in Blue Beetle with these 9 issues than I ever was before. And I was even a Ted Kord fan, but I think as of late, Ted Kord over the last few years, he's always been made into a joke character because of his affiliation with Booster Gold, which is all well and good. But I have a feeling that this type of writing is making me respect Ted Kord all the more because Ted Kord gets more respect here. But in any event, I thought it was I liked it more muted.
Yeah, I mean, I enjoy the story, but I just feel like it's the art that like at some point the art gets so bad that I don't want to read the story. That's where that's where this is headed for me. Um, again, the story, a lot of the points you make are good. It does feel, and again, this goes back to the art. It's a sort of a big cast, right? With names that we're not familiar with and kind of struggle to remember because everybody's got 3 names, right? The civilian name, the name they go by, like their superhero name, and then the name of the actual scarab. It makes
Yeah,
it a little confusing. So
agreed.
if
Yeah.
the story's going to be a little complicated and the identities of these characters, what have you, then you got aliens that have weird names and what have you. Like all of that leads to confusion. Don't give me confusing art too, where I struggle to figure out what's going on, right? I mean, it's the same problem that the Flash suffers from under Cy Spurrier. So, all right, excuse me. Last book we're going to talk about in detail: Action Comics number 1065, written by Joshua Williamson, art by Rafa Sandoval and Miguel Mendoca, colors by Alejandro Sanchez, letters by Dave Sharp. House of Brainiac Part 3. What'd you think?
I I'm really enjoying the Zarnians. I'm glad. I had mixed feelings with the idea of a bottle city of Zarnia and that Brainiac was going to have an army of Zarnians. I had mixed feelings about it uh, because I figure, well, once the Zarnians are used up, or once he uses them as an army, then what's gonna then it takes away from the uniqueness of Lobo. And I kind of like the central conceit of Lobo as a character, that he's the last Zarnian. There's only one of them. It'd be like if there's a billion like Deadpools. I mean, who wants? There's only one Deadpool. Come on. I mean, you might have Lady Deadpool and all this other nonsense, but there's only one Deadpool. Anyways, that's how I feel about Lobo. But I got to tell you, I actually they're really growing on me, these Zarnians, and. The House of Brainiac itself, this is a storyline that if absolute power is as fun as this, I'll be happy. I enjoy this. I'm really intrigued with. I love how Williamson has developed Brainiac's machinations here, and his affiliation with Lex Luthor, his what exactly is Brainiac's goal? He seems to be building something that requires an immense amount of power, but once he builds it, what's going to happen then? What's the ultimate end game? We still don't really know, but we know that Superman and Lobo are battling against the other Zarnians, General Shakal, who is very much a badass and leader of this sort of like Zarnian gang, who at the end of the battle, in the midst of the battle against Superman and Lobo, makes a proposal to Lobo, basically saying, "Look, I've heard that you're a badass too, Lobo, but I tell you what, I'll make you a deal. I'm getting old. I need to be replaced. Why don't you, if you want to join, if you want to join us, show me you mean business, then you can. But first thing we got to do is take out Superman." So, I mean, it's finally, I can actually believe Lobo doing that. Or maybe I'm not really sure. How does Lobo feel? I mean, Lobo, I thought, destroyed it, was one of the last survivors of Zarnia. But now that he finally meets people of his own kind that actually respect him and think like him, and the idea of taking out Superman, that's something that I could almost see Lobo doing. And in fact, he does it in this issue. And I think it felt believable to me. I quite enjoyed that. And the art here is just absolutely fantastic. I mean, I apologize. I don't have it on the tip of my tongue. It's Sandoval, Raphael Sandoval. The art's just absolutely fantastic. Uh, and I want to give a shout out to Rafa Sandoval and Miguel Mendoca. Fantastic. The coloring by Alejandro Sanchez, really good. I mean, this is just it. You know, I felt the battle. I felt the epicness of the battle when Superman and Lobo were fighting in space. I even inside Brainiac's ship. I love how Kara and Connor are basically they shrunk down to size. They escape, but they're shrunk down to size, and they're being sort of like hunted by like Brainiac's like mechanical dogs. And ultimately, I love how kick-ass Kara is. You know, Kara is, you know, she's no pushover here. Frankly, I wish Power Girl was scripted as aggressive as Williamson's scripts the aggressiveness of Kara here, and rightly so. I wish, frankly, Power Girl was scripted more like that over in her pages of her comic. I love Livewire here. I love how Kara and the entire super team essentially escape in order to take on Brainiac. Unfortunately, they end up being relatively handily defeated, and only to lead to Lex Luthor and Brainiac end up entering the bottle city of Zarnia, which I thought was pretty damn. I think that was it. They entered the bottle city of yeah, they did. Sorry about that. I'm just looking here. But yeah, they enter the bottle city of Kolu, because the big revelation is am I saying that right? Kolu?
Kolu, yeah.
Kolu, which is Brainiac's home world, which was destroyed, but he saved a city from his planet, and so he's actually got the city that he was raised in. He actually has it preserved, and that's a huge revelation, and it ties into another character that plays a role in the backup. So, there's lots of moving parts to this plot, and it's been very well done by Williamson here. I'm surprised because, again, I want to give Williamson props. On one hand, I can be very hard on him, and the other hand, he impresses the hell out of me. This is one where he seems to be handling all the various plot threads relatively well, and they're consistent and they fit, unlike Dark Crisis. But I hope it keeps up because I'm really enjoying this, and I love the art. So, what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, this really puts the action in Action Comics, right? Like, it feels big. It feels, worthy of Superman as a character. I will say, like, if I have any nitpick about this particular issue, we don't actually get that much Superman. It's more of the super family. But yeah, you kind of come to expect Lobo to, not be very trustworthy, and he kind of lives up to that expectation at the end, where he has the option to be the main man, and so he's going to take that. And so again, you figure that's not to be. It doesn't come as a surprise. I'll put it that way. So how this leads into absolute power, again, we're still trying to figure that out. It remains to be seen, but I like the story of what we're getting from Williamson. And it's interesting because it has such a different feel than what he was giving us in his Superman title for those first 12 issues, basically the first two arcs, which I find really interesting because now obviously he's writing both titles. Both titles are giving us this House of Brainiac story, and the feel of them is a little bit different. It feels a little more connected to the rest of the DCU because the story, I think, has expanded in scope. But he's doing a good job of keeping it Superman focused. He's doing a good job of juggling a very large cast, and a good job of taking villains that we've seen 100 times, like Brainiac, and bringing something new to them, which isn't always the easiest thing to do, because again, these characters have been around for such a really long time. But yeah, I'm really impressed with what we're getting from Josh in this. So, all right, let's talk about the.
Well, there's a backup.
Yeah, the backup. Let me get there because the creators are different on the backup. So let me get to, let's see. Yeah, Brainiac and Son from Joshua Williamson. Art is by Mirko Kolak. Colors by Mike Spicer. Letters by Dave Sharp. And we're basically getting the kind of the son of Brainiac, who is somebody that we've seen before. But this gives some hints on who the Brainiac Queen might be, I suppose. So I'm kind of curious what your take on it was.
Well, Brainiac's son is Vril Dox, and Vril basically discovers, it's revealed to him by Brainiac, his father, that Kolu, he's got the bottle city of Kolu, which is the city that Vril was raised in, and that Vril's mother is still alive. So Brainiac's wife is still alive. So one has to wonder if that is the case. You got to wonder, because there's been all kinds of I'm speculating all over the place. Does Lena? I thought maybe Lena Luthor would form the consciousness of the Brainiac of the Brainiac Queen, but maybe it's going to be Brainiac's mother, or maybe it's going to be some combination of the mother and Lena Luthor, or what have you. I don't know. I'm not even sure what Brainiac is doing, but it's clear that Brainiac, at one point, Brainiac has his son's, he's got his hands wrapped around his son Vril's throat, but he doesn't kill him. He doesn't hurt his son. He lets him go. So clearly, it seems as if Brainiac does have some emotions here, and this is interesting, because we're not really accustomed to thinking of Brainiac as a creature who's prone to emotion, or as a life form prone to emotion. He's been more computer and robotic and computerized in his thinking, and algorithmic in his thinking, devoid of emotion, more like a diehard computerized, like Vulcan. And here it's very obvious that this Brainiac is he does seem to possess some degree of empathy, and also anger and frustration, and all of this. This is not something I associate with Brainiac per se. And yet, very clearly, he seems to be going through something. And all these emotions that Brainiac's been feeling has led him to accumulate all the various iterations of Brainiac throughout the universe, and potentially the multiverse, because he wants to utilize all the powers to create one massive Brainiac Queen. And what does the bottle city of Kolu have to do with that? What does his son Vril Drox have to do with that? What does Vril's mother, Brainiac's, I guess, ex-wife, have to do with that? I got to be honest, I'm going to have to Google. I don't recall Brainiac ever having a wife. I mean, I know he must, but I just plain forget that story if it exists. I'm going to have to Google this. And I thank you, Joshua Williamson, for writing this, because I love being challenged like this. Or it's such an easy challenge, because I love when I don't know if I don't know something about Superman's past, I love Googling it and looking into it. And I'll be looking into this, and I encourage anyone listening to do that as well. And if you're watching on YouTube, feel free to enlighten us about Brainiac's wife or ex-wife, because I want to learn more about it, because I'm a longtime DC reader, but I've forgotten a hell of a lot more than I remember.
Yeah, and Vril Drox, if you're wondering what does that sound familiar, or what have you. Yeah, so, ancestor of Brainiac 5, obviously. He's Brainiac 2, and he was a hero in the 90s. He was in... was it the Legion? I think there was where it was L.E.G.I.O.N. And then Rebels was a series that spun out of that, and he was the leader of that. So interesting to see him show up here. I haven't seen him in a really long time, but last time we saw him, he was supposed to be a hero still. So not sure how accurate that is these days. But anyway, that does it for the books we're going to talk about in detail. There was a couple of other single issues. So we had Looney Tunes issue 278 is also out this week. And then there's a Spanish version of the Blue Beetle book, as has been the case throughout, which I think is really cool. Also, in terms of collections this week, we've got Superman Volume 2. This is the Joshua Williamson book that we were just mentioning. This collects issues 6 through 12, which is the uh, kind of the end of that, first arc, as I was mentioning. We also have Poison Ivy Volume 1. This is the G. Willow Wilson written Poison Ivy book that we've really been enjoying. It collects the first 6 issues. There's a Justice League International Omnibus. This is the 3rd volume, and it collects Justice League 51 through 60, some Secret Origin issues, some an annual, Justice League Quarterly, Green Lantern, JLA 80-page giant, formerly known as the Justice League. It's got a ton of stuff in it. It's 1,500 pages, $150. So, and it has a fantastic new cover from Kevin Maguire. So, really good. Batman Fortress. This is the Gary Whitta written, Derek Robertson drawn miniseries. So this collects the entire series 1 through 8, which we really enjoyed. So quite a few decent collections out this week if you prefer reading your stuff in trade. And then the last thing is there's an Adventure of Superman George Perez hardcover, which collects DC Comics Presents 61 and then Action Comics 643 through 652, basically, which is the George Perez era of Adventures of Superman. So.
Do you want to talk about? I just want to remind you, the Ramona and me. Do you want
to? I was saving it till now.
Okay.
So as Rocky mentioned, there is a Ramona Frandon tribute in the pages in all the books this week from DC. Ramona Frandon, creator of Metamorpho, very well known for drawing Plastic Man and Aquaman as well. In the Silver Age, she worked until she was 97, which is just crazy to me. And what's great about this story, it's like a 2-page story. It's written by one of the DC editors, actually. Brittany Holzer, I think is how you pronounce her name. And it basically tells the story of Brittany first getting a chance to meet Ramona at a show, and then going to the editor-in-chief of DC at the time, Marie Javins, and saying, "Hey, why?" This was about 3 years ago. This is somebody who's a legend in the industry. Why isn't she working for DC? And that led to the covers that we had from Ramona, which is fantastic. So, yeah, Brittany Holzer writes it. June Brigman handles the pencils. Roy Richardson on inks, Trish Mulvihill on colors, and Janice Chang on letters. And it basically tells the story of Brittany getting a chance to meet this pioneer, this woman that worked in comics in the earliest days, when it was very rare for women to be working in comics, and brought her back into the DC fold. And then how Brittany got a chance to become friends with Ramona, and how many great conversations and good times they shared. And it's very heartfelt, and June Brigman's art does a fantastic job of evoking kind of the style and the innocence and the cleanliness of Ramona Frandon's style of art. And then at the end, there's also a quote from Amy Frandon, who is Ramona's daughter. So I thought it was a beautifully written, gorgeous art, and it made me tear up. Like the loss of Ramona Frandon. And don't get me wrong, I mean, she was 97 years old. She lived a full life. She touched a lot of people. And I do wish that she'd stayed with us just for a little longer, because it would have been great had she been able to see Metamorpho, this character that she created, on the big screen in James Gunn's Superman movie that's coming. I think it's coming next year. That would have been, I think she would have just really enjoyed that. She would have gotten a kick out of that. But it made me, once again, mourn the loss of her. And the reason I didn't want to mention it until the end here is because this is my quote unquote book of the week. This is the what I loved more than anything else, what stood head and shoulders above anything. This shows the power of comics in terms of art and words together, what it can do. With all due respect to Green Lantern, which if this memorial hadn't been here in these issues, I probably would have picked Green Lantern. But yeah, I had to pick this. And part of this is because Ramona meant so much to me, because she drew the first comic that I ever bought, that I ever read. And getting a chance to meet her at San Diego Comic-Con, I think it was 2016. I've told the story before. I got all choked up, and she was so lovely. And I got some original art from her. I got a commission from her. I got a picture with her, and she was just, when people tell you don't meet your heroes because I disappoint you, this was completely the opposite of that. She was everything I could have, wished for and more. She was just so pleasant and so appreciative and so humble. So yeah, that's my book of the week. I don't know if it's cheating, and I don't care. I loved it. It was great to see. And Ramona Frandon will definitely be missed. So
Yeah.
all right, what's your
Well,
book of the week?
I first I just want to add I don't need to add much. I agree. I got a little teary eyed too because it she accomplished so much in her life. It reminded me of my grandmother who died at the age of 96. Accomplished quite a lot too. I I'm I'm missing three Ramona Frandon covers because DC had some alternate covers with Ramona Frandon. So I'm hoping when I'm at Fan Fusion, maybe next week I'll be on the lookout for some of those, and hopefully I'll be able to pick them up. So yeah, definitely kudos to tribute to her. And just for those listening on the podcast, for more quotes remembering Ramona, you can visit dc.com/remembering-Ramona. So you can check that out. As for my pick of the week, this is I would have to go with I'm going to go with Action Comics. I had I Joshua Williamson has done a good job, and I actually enjoyed Batman and Robin as well. But Action Comics, Superman, Lobo, the way that he's handling and orchestrating all the plots with the House of Brainiac saga, I find it really impressive. And so I just want to make sure I can see if I can bring up that on the screen. There we go. I think I did it. Yeah, but Action Comics it is. So yeah, that's it, my friend.
Yeah, good choice. One of the other things I meant to mention it when we were talking about Green Lantern, but there's an Ian Churchill cover for Green Lantern this week. It's so fire. Like I saw it when I was reading our press copy, and I was like, oh man, it's not that one. That's the main cover. But unfortunately it's a 1 in 25 variant, and I just couldn't justify. I have no idea what my local comic shop will be selling it for, but I've been trying to cut down on the number of variant covers I buy. I don't want to encourage, but man, it's so good. It's so good. So anyway, so that's going to do it, everybody. Don't forget, if you're going to be in Phoenix next weekend, definitely head out to Fan Fusion. Rocky and I will be hosting panels and roaming the quote unquote halls, as it were, talking to creators and what have you. So I will be moderating the Venom panel with Donnie Cates and Ryan Stegman on Saturday. I'll be moderating a panel about how to write a comic script on Sunday with some comic creators giving advice to aspiring up-and-coming creators. And then Rocky and I will be hosting a panel on Friday. It's kind of late. It's 9 p.m., but it's X-Men eras. We'll be talking about the various eras of the X-Men, characters that debuted during various eras, and what kind of the big stories of various eras will be, all in celebration of or along with the success of X-Men 97, the cartoon, which is doing gangbusters right now. So if you're so inclined, looking, hey, what should I be reading, or what are some of the best X-Men stories through the years, definitely join us Friday at 9. Follow us on social media, and you can you'll find I'll post the room number when we find out where it is. So that being said, don't forget, everybody, if you're listening to audio only, head over to YouTube, subscribe to Rocky's channel, Comic Space Boom ! Where we do the DC Spotlight every week, and you can check out all the other content that Rocky has on there. Conversely, if you watch us on YouTube every week, there's tons of back matter in the Comic Source podcast feed. So if you go to the audio only feed on whatever podcast app or platform you prefer, do a search for the Comic Source and subscribe. You'll have access to all our past interviews, reviews, convention coverage, all that sort of stuff. So we appreciate the support as always. Hope to see some of you out there at Phoenix Fan Fusion, and we will talk to you next time.
Catch you later.